In 1828, a teenage boy stumbled into the streets of Nuremberg. He could barely speak, didn't know his name, didn't know the world. He said he had lived his entire life in a tiny, dark cell, alone. No mirrors, no people, no language, just silence. But within weeks of being rescued, something strange happened. He became someone. They gave him a name, Kaspar Hauser. They gave him dates, beliefs, etiquette. And he accepted it all, not because it was true, but because it was repeated, because it was expected. And that's how a self was born. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. If Kaspar could become a person so quickly, so completely, based on pure suggestion, what does that say about you? You were also given a name, a nationality, a set of rules. You've spent your whole life repeating stories you didn't write, performing a self you didn't consciously choose. So here's the question that cracks it all open. If you had grown up in a dark room, who would you be right now? And if the answer is someone entirely different, then who are you really? 1. The invention of you. He was told his name before he could walk, given a flag to salute before he could question what a nation was, assigned roles, dreams, and fears before he ever had a say in the matter. And so were you. The you believe in, the one you defend, introduce, and feel hurt for, isn't something you built. It's something you were handed, downloaded like software without your permission. You didn't choose your name, your religion, your worldview. They were installed early and repeated until they felt like truth. That's the wild part. Repetition creates reality. You hear something long enough, you believe it. It's why jingles stick in your head and childhood labels still sting. Someone once said, "You're not creative," and that voice became part of your story. But was it ever true? Probably not. And yet the illusion of identity solidified. You've been living inside an identity illusion so subtle, it feels like it was born with you. But what if it wasn't? What if you're just playing a role written by others? Imagine this. You were born in a small fishing village in Iceland. Different language, different religion, different weather. Do you honestly think you'd still be the same you? Of course not. Your thoughts, beliefs, and even sense of humor would be shaped by that environment. That alone proves how unstable this so-called self is. It's not fixed. It's a costume. The false self, built to keep things feeling familiar, not true. And yet, people cling to it. They say, "That's just who I am," as if the ego doesn't constantly evolve. But here's the trick. The more you defend a version of yourself, the more you get trapped in it. Identity illusion becomes your reality, and suddenly you're acting out a script you didn't even write. But then something odd happens. One day, a thought appears that says, "Wait, if I didn't choose who I am, who did?" 2. The voice in your head isn't who you think. There's a voice narrating your life, and you probably think it's you. It comments on your coffee, it complains in traffic, it judges strangers on the street and replays old arguments like a broken cassette. But here's the kicker, you didn't invite it. It just showed up. That alone should make you pause. If you can hear the voice, then who's doing the listening? Most people never ask that. They're too busy reacting to thoughts they never actually chose. And that's how the ego keeps its grip, by convincing you it's your voice, your truth. Try this next time you're walking alone. Listen for the voice. Wait for it to say something. Maybe it'll remind you of a task, or criticize how you look, or fantasize about an imaginary future. Then stop and ask, did I choose to think that? You'll quickly realize the answer is no. These thoughts arise on their own. They appear like clouds, uninvited and often unwanted. And yet, the false self grabs hold of them like gospel. It repeats them, defends them, builds identity on top of them. But a thought isn't real just because it's loud. Now here's the strange twist. That same voice will argue with itself. One moment it tells you to go for the job. The next it says you're not good enough. That's not clarity. That's noise. a constant loop of inherited fears, cultural noise, and outdated programming. When you really listen, it becomes obvious. The voice in your head isn't one voice, it's a collage. Parents, teachers, TV commercials, all mashed together. That inner chatter, that's the soundtrack of the ego desperately trying to stay relevant. So what happens when you stop believing the voice? Something quiet steps forward. Not a louder voice, but a silence. A stillness that was always there, hidden behind the mental static. That silence is not part of the identity illusion. It's the space that sees it. It doesn't judge. It doesn't explain. It just watches. That's pure awareness. And once you've touched that space, even for a second, the voice loses its power. Not because it stopped talking, but because you stopped confusing it with yourself. 3. Memory is a fictional editor. People like to believe their memories are sacred archives, clean, crisp files that store the truth, but memory is more like a half-drunk screenwriter, rewriting the script every time you recall it. Think back to a moment from your childhood, the smell, the color of the room, the expression on someone's face. You'd swear it happened exactly like that. But science says otherwise. Studies like the Lost in the Mall experiment prove how easily false memories are implanted. The brain doesn't remember, it imagines with authority. Every time you remember, you're actually reconstructing, not pulling from a vault, but repainting a picture, using whatever emotional paint is nearby. And here's the weird part, that painting starts to feel more real than what actually happened. If the story fits your current identity illusion, your brain locks it in like fact. I've always been anxious, you say, but maybe you're just remembering a few moments and forgetting all the times you weren't. The false self needs consistency, even if it has to bend memory to get it. Have you ever had a fight with someone and remembered the entire thing differently, or been so sure of a detail only to be proven completely wrong? That's memory playing tricks, not out of malice, but out of habit. The ego doesn't care about truth. It cares about coherence, so it edits, adds, and deletes. It shapes the past to protect the present narrative. And most people never notice. They live inside a looping story that never really happened, defending memories that were mostly fiction to begin with. Now imagine what this means for your identity. If the past is shaky and memory is unreliable, then who are you? You've been stacking bricks of who I am on a foundation of sand. One emotional storm and it shifts. But the awareness that sees this, the one watching the memories flicker and morph, that doesn't change, that's pure awareness. Not touched by memory, not shaped by stories. And if you can begin to see that, then maybe you're ready to look at something even deeper. The thoughts that arise before memory even forms. 4. You never chose your thoughts. You think you're thinking. But let's get real. Have you ever tried to predict your next thought? Go ahead. Sit still for a second and see what shows up. You'll notice something odd. The thoughts just appear. Like someone's tossing cards on the table. And before you can even ask why it came, your mind has already reacted. Neuroscience backs this up. Your brain fires decisions milliseconds before you're even aware of them. So, if you're not the one choosing these thoughts, who is? This cracks the illusion of free will wide open. You don't choose your cravings. You don't pick your worries. You don't decide to suddenly remember that awkward thing from 10 years ago. They just come. And yet the false self grabs each one and says, "Yep, that's me." It's like watching a movie and thinking you're the director, when really you're just the audience. A thought appears. The ego says, "That's mine." And the identity illusion tightens its grip. Try noticing your next impulsive reaction. You see a headline. You feel anger. Did you choose that anger? Did you sit down and craft it like a poem? Of course not. It came, it surged, and your mind claimed it. But there's a split-second space between the thought and your identification with it. That space is gold. That's the doorway to pure awareness, the silent witness who isn't triggered, who doesn't grab every emotion like it's a personal insult or proof of worth. This awareness doesn't argue with the mind, it doesn't resist the thought, it just watches, and in that watching, something strange happens. The thought loses its power. You don't need to control your mind or stop thinking. You just stop believing everything that shows up. And when that happens, even for a moment, you start to wonder, if I'm not the thoughts, and I'm not the one choosing them, then who exactly is this self I keep defending? 5. The self as a story, and not a very stable one. Let's get brutally honest. Who you think you are is mostly a story, not in the poetic sense. Literally, a stitched-together narrative built from past experiences, random labels, and cultural conditioning. You were told you're shy, or confident, or smart, or average, and you believed it. And over time, you shaped your behavior to match that script. But if your life had taken a different route, say, born to different parents in another country, your personality would have been completely different. That alone reveals the illusion. The self is not a fixed identity. It's a reaction to environment and repetition. Consider how often people say things like, "I'm just not the type of person who..." That's not truth, that's attachment. The ego needs to be someone, even if it's someone in pain. You've probably worn the same label for years, never realizing it's just a mask you forgot to take off. Identity illusion thrives on repetition. It's why you defend habits that don't serve you. Because deep down, the false self would rather be consistent than free. Better to be a broken version of me than to face the unknown of who you actually are. But here's where things get shaky for the ego. That story of self, it changes drastically. Think of who you were 10 years ago. Do you still believe all the same things? Probably not. So, who changed? Did the real you evolve? Or was the real you never the story to begin with? That's the crack in the mask. The character on the stage changes outfits, moods, dreams, but the stage remains the same. That stage is awareness. It doesn't care what costume is worn. It simply watches the performance. And when you begin to see your self-concept as just a role, just a collection of thoughts passing through, you get space. Space to rewrite, or not write at all. You don't have to fight the story. You just have to stop being fused to it. The moment you step back, even slightly, and observe it without judgment, something ancient wakes up, something quiet, something untouched by storyline. And that's when you start to sense, maybe I'm not the character at all. Maybe I've been the watcher, the screen the whole time, and if that's true, what else have I misunderstood? 6. You are the watcher, not the character. Most people go through life like a character in a movie, reacting to the plot, chasing desires, avoiding fears, never realizing they're not the one on screen. They're the one watching it, the one who sees the thoughts come and go, the one who notices when the body feels tired, when the heart aches, when the mind spirals. That silent presence behind every experience, that's not the ego, that's not the false self, that's you. Not the identity illusion, but the pure awareness that has no name and needs no story. Here's something to try. Sit alone, don't force anything, just observe. You'll see how thoughts appear like birds flying through the sky. Some thoughts are exciting, some are painful, some don't even make sense. But none of them stay. They pass. And yet something remains, right? That something is what's watching. It doesn't react. It doesn't speak. It simply is. It's been with you since the beginning, before language, before memory, before anyone told you who you should be. This is the space people touch in deep meditation, or after a heartbreak when the mind gets quiet. It's the part of you that doesn't panic when everything else collapses. That awareness doesn't shift when your job title changes or your body gets older. It was there when you were a kid, it's here now, and it'll be there long after the next ego identity crumbles. And this is why the most powerful transformation isn't becoming a better person. It's realizing you were never just a person to begin with. You've been taught to look for yourself in mirrors, resumes, opinions, emotions. But what if the real you can't be found that way? What if it's not something you can grasp, but something you already are? Pure awareness doesn't need validation. It doesn't need a backstory. It just observes, like the sky holding every kind of weather without becoming any of it. And the moment you recognize this watching presence, the question arises naturally: if I am the watcher, what happens when the character disappears? 7. What happens when the self disappears? The question most people avoid is the one that truly matters. What happens when there's no more you to defend? When the stories fall quiet and the mask slips off, what's left? It's not emptiness like the ego fears. It's spaciousness, a kind of presence that feels shockingly familiar, like waking up from a dream and realizing you were the dreamer the whole time. Without the false self narrating every moment, life doesn't stop. It flows more freely, more honestly. The world doesn't vanish. The identity illusion does. Here's the part that sounds crazy until it's felt. When the ego dissolves, peace remains. Not the kind you chase through achievement or control, but the kind that's always been underneath the noise. That doesn't mean you turn into a passive blob. You still move, speak, choose, but there's no longer a desperate need to be someone. You start responding to life instead of performing in it. That shift can feel like a death at first, and in a way it is. The death of the one you never really were, but the silence that follows is full, not empty. It's where intuition lives, where presence speaks without words. You stop being trapped in a loop of mental commentary and begin to taste life directly. That's not poetry, it's experience. Washing dishes, walking the dog, or even sitting in traffic becomes strangely sacred, because there's no longer a self there needing things to be different. There's just awareness, noticing, breathing, being. It's what the mystics pointed to when they spoke of freedom, not from the world, but from the illusion of the one who suffers in it. And now the question stands, like a doorway you've been circling your whole life. If the self is just a mask, what's underneath, and who's been wearing it this whole time? Don't rush to answer. The mind will try. But this can't be solved with logic. Only silence reveals it. And maybe, just maybe, the silence has been waiting patiently for you to stop searching and start seeing.